So we blow up the sun.
Although I think you should put that in because it's funny.
Just a little blooper. Okay. Hey there. Welcome to Simply Worldbuilding. Today we are going to continue on the second pass of our world, but we're going to move on from Yothurmiir now and into a new area.
Finally, am I right, watchers?
No, it's good.
What the fuck is even going on at this point?
Oh, we are so not okay.
Holy shit.
Okay.
That's so funny.
We've reached the singularity of laughter.
Oh my god.
Okay.
I'm glad I have this on video so I can watch this back when I'm more fucking conscious and can understand what the hell happened.
It's gonna be less funny.
You're not even gonna understand what's happening because there's no context anyway.
I know.
Okay.
I'm like, man, I missed something while I was taking up the brownies.
Holy shit. Okay.
Put that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the clipboard wasn't on screen. So
Okay, we're back. Okay, we're moving on to a new area. Would you like to tell me where that area is, Tyler?
I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. Oh my god.
No, I just can't stop laughing because
I'm a broken man. I'm a shell, a husk of who I used to be.
Oh my fucking god.
Oh my god, I blacked out. I don't know where I am.
You're at my house.
We're approaching the 3-minute mark.
Yeah.
And 10 seconds of that was episode.
I think I'm approaching better.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Put that in.
Yeah. Again.
I'm not making any cuts so far.
So.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
We did Yothurmiir. We're going to go down and move to Phyros, the other one that we've already done a fair bit of work in fleshing out.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, we're going to do the same sort of, I don't know what you'd call that, but we're going to take the same sort of like list of things that we're trying to make sure are ironed out in this pass through. And today, Phyros. Tomorrow, I guess you'll have to like, comment, and subscribe to find out. Anyway, Phyros.
Yes. So let's see. Let's pull up our little set here. Is there any area that you kind of have a bit of meat on that you want to start in?
If we just go straight from the top,
Yeah.
I think allies and enemies / relationships with other nations.
Yeah.
These guys are interesting because I think they kind of bounce back and forth. I don't see them as being highly aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do think that they've been wealthy and expanding population-wise, and so have kind of a bunch of times pushed a little bit.
Encroached.
And tested how other people feel about having their borders pushed on a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
So they kind of have like this tense but functional working relationship with Yothurmiir.
Yeah.
Where they'd been at war multiple times in the past, but at the current stage, they have a relatively healthy relationship with them. They do trade and stuff. I don't think they call themselves allies. A little bit of tension still on like, are we going to go to war at some point?
Yeah.
Possibly, because we haven't been in a little while, but if we look at a track record...
Yeah, definitely. No, I know what you mean there, definitely. And yeah, if there's any place they're going to be slowly encroaching borders on bit by bit, Yothurmiir is going to be it for sure. Like, it's just that rivalry's there. It's that tension's there.
And then there's next door is this sort of like sweeping rolling plains, like roving nomadic peoples area that we've kind of likened to a little bit like Mongolia, where I think that pretty regularly people disrespect the borders by crossing, to find fresh water, or I mean, not that they really need fresh water, but like resources and to hunt and stuff like that. But there's not really much there for them.
Yeah.
So there's no like permanent settlements, and they haven't gone to war with them because like a lot of times the people aren't around.
Yeah.
And so like if they're not there, who do you go to war with?
I do probably think that Phyros also in that case would again like encroach bit by bit, especially because it's kind of an unsupervised border for the most part. And so and not even necessarily in like the conquest sort of instance, but it's just like you say, Phyros is growing so rapidly. And so it's like the space is needed. Like Phyros is kind of spilling over itself a little bit. And so even in times where they're not trying to really encroach, it's like also people are kind of scared because like they're growing, and so they just have to sit there and shrink before it. Yeah.
So I think while that border is kind of a little bit fluid, because like those aren't stationary people who say like this is our space, like stop here. They just like might leave and then come back and be like, wait a minute.
You encroached that fence another 3 inches this year.
I do think that in the future, that could be a problem because those guys, despite being like sort of not a typical government or nation or anything like that, are quite powerful.
Yeah.
And so like say a settlement did pop up, even if it was like guarded, if this like Mongolian horde-esque like mounted troop division rolls up, they could steamroll that town easily. So I think that's kind of something that's stopping them from pushing it too far. But if like it keeps spilling a little bit and they're like, we haven't got any pushback yet, and they set down roots, that they could find that would be actually the outcome.
Yeah, I think what's probably enforcing the border more than anything is the fact that like it is an area that it's hard to actually put down a settlement, hence why this place itself hasn't grown.
Totally.
Like the people who live here haven't actually managed to keep anywhere like really, really solidly nailed down, because just this sort of the primary sort of Leviathan creature that lives in this place is a fucking force of nature.
Yeah.
And so Phyros, even at its slow crawl, will encounter problems if they are actually trying to, or intentionally or unintentionally, encroach on the border. Just like the people at the forefront and are going to experience the problems. 100%. They're going to experience those problems, and so it's a hard thing to make a hard push for.
So while there haven't been like wars or conflicts between the two, there is kind of this slow pushing the boundaries that is eventually going to result in one conflict or another, whether or not it's the people there, or if it's the same thing that the people are moving around to sort of coexist with.
That could be, again, snapshotting into whatever the current day of this world is. That could be a primary political issue in this sort of plains area. Like, it's probably something that people would talk about. It's Phyros is such a gigantic place, and like, they're kind of pushing us around a little bit, and so it might not be something that's again boiling over, but it's an area of tension that if you wanted to use that to make a plot point, you absolutely could.
I would like to see at least a small element in the background where there are some kind of settlements that are, close to the boundaries, if not maybe pushing like 1 foot across it. I would like to see that kind of element in the background where maybe they do even have like full on like guard regiments there. Yeah. But they're kind of like, there's just this general unease. Like maybe they saw it in the distance one time and then they're like, okay guys, what are we doing here? What's the, so I would like to kind of see like almost like Western movie frontier.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
A little bit of a thing going on there.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
But in the grand scheme of things, relationships wise, It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right.
You could call it like semi-neutral for the most part. But yeah, okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Its next neighbor is the sort of elven forested country.
Yeah. I think kind of bad.
Yeah,
I think kind of a bad relationship. Like they, are still going to have trade. Like the kind of overarching thing here is that Phyros is like the Leviathan of trade here in this world.
Yeah, it is probably the primary global superpower.
Yeah.
Like that's what you would call it for sure.
So like, they're still going to need to have at least some sort of functioning relationship. Mm-hmm. But I do also kind of see that maybe they, well, especially because Phyros doesn't necessarily have like a lot of wood. Mm-hmm. Like it's primarily like sort of almost prairie-esque ish.
And you're gonna find like also like semi-tropical probably when you're coming up to the area that's obviously within like the large bay of Phyros and also like obviously at the waterline.
Yeah,
obviously.
there's a lot of heat, a lot of like flat ground, and not a ton in the way of just like excess wood, and so you have this place nearby that has that's their thing is excess wood, and then you also have the people that live there really respect the wood, and so that's kind of immediately a point of contention. Because they this place has hella ships, and what do you make those out of? Wood. And so I could see them having straight up like probably outright had like some warfare where like these like elves are maybe like guerrilla style, like hiding in the trees and fighting back against this big nation that is trying to find them to do battle, or just outright while they're absent chop down these trees. That's what we're here for to begin with.
It's basically big wood versus the Amazon rainforest.
So think the Lorax.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think not a good relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the very least, like they are still actively engaging in trade when needed, but on like these, like the Elven nations on their agenda, on their time. Like if we need something, we'll let you know, kind of thing. On their terms is the word.
I think it's probably like the actual the quote unquote governments of both. I picture the governance of the elves being very different, but yeah, any negotiations that happen tend to be at the very least tense neutral, but also plenty like since Phyros is such a gigantic it's just a moneymaker. Like it's where the money is. There's going to be large companies that want the resources, and so they will be encroaching. And then there's like, hey, you guys got to get out of here, and they're like, oh, and then the company eventually gets scared off, only to come back a little bit later. And so it's like that constant harassment is going to fall to the responsibility of the government of Phyros, and that's I think where that tension's going to lie. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So relationship not very good, but functional.
Yeah. So that's most of the neighboring countries, as we've established. No one likes the swamp. Swamp boy's bad.
They're bad. They don't really have a government, but you can't get along with monsters.
Yeah, you can't. Well. Yeah, exactly. It's either the best you're gonna get is a raving band of barbarians and warlords. Yeah. In that area,
and at worst, an undead moose that summons hordes of zombies.
Yeah. Is that the worst?
That might not be the worst.
I was going to say,
the crazy part.
Yeah, I was like, maybe top 3.
Yeah.
Top 5.
And then, so let's toss it across the river, the ocean. This desert nation here, the one with the one single city remaining, wealthy nation, I think overall quite good.
The trade's going to have to be a huge part of it. Yeah.
Because this is a rich nation that doesn't have very much resources, like in as far as like.
I don't think they have like resources in means of like metals, wood,
grains. Yeah, they're in a desert. I mean, they got like hella fish.
Yeah,
but as far as like your General Mills cereal or whatever, like probably not a lot of that.
Well, I think one thing that's actually going to drive a lot of the GDP, quote unquote, of the desert nation is the fact that it was the home of such a advanced ancient civilization, and so they're constantly sending out people into the desert to claim like these old relics that are powerful and stuff like that. Like if there was a place that you're gonna go like people are going to be combing the desert for magic items constantly. You know what I mean? And so like that's the kind of stuff that's going to be traded, and it's going to be valuable. And then they trade those in turn for the resources that they lack.
Yeah.
So the relationship trade-wise is going to be good for sure. I think it's going to have similar feel to Yothurmiir, where it's
definitely the damper.
Of like, well, you also have this big problem of all of your wannabe Captain Jack Sparrow stealing all of our ships and stuff.
So because they're kind of in the position where they should be handling these like roving pirates, which is because they're also very, very seafaring, but also have such a big gap in between the rich and the poor, but a lot of access to ships. So a lot of the poor people just go and steal things. So yes, they've got the pirates, and that is their responsibility to handle. So there is going to be that beef between the two of them. But they also have such like a prosperous trade network that I think it's real up and down. They've got a good relationship, but can't stop bickering about whose problem this is, who has to deal with it.
Well, because Phyros is probably going to have the most powerful navy in the world as well.
And so they can handle it. But also, why are we wasting our ships and stuff on this that you should be doing it?
It's this constant sort of thing. I feel like, that's going to be the problem with like most nations with them. It's like, hey, we love to trade with you, but it's like when you have like a really good friend and you always go over to their house, but they have such a shit-eating little brother that really just wants to fuck up your steeds. And it's like, dude, can we do something about this? And it's like, no, he just lives here.
He just lives here, man.
But so that does make a lot of sense with it's especially because I don't think there would be like any wars that would have overtly happened with them, because it's like, this desert city doesn't really have a lot to gain from... Well, it does have a lot to gain from trying to claim its land and stuff like that, but I just don't see them being a warmongering sort of place.
Totally.
You know, I think a lot of they're going to be pretty happy with like the land, not happy with the land that they're in, but they're going to be pretty situated there, and they're not expansionist. So I don't think there's going to be any like prior wars between them and Phyros. And so as such, it's like trade's good, damper that down with the whole pirates thing, but you're still in the positive. You're still in the positive.
And if we look at the mass amalgam of city-states. I think overall also good.
I would say so too.
Because kind of that's the biggest trade connection for everybody. But the big thing about these guys is everybody needs to trade with them, and so they can't have that bad of a relationship. But also I think that there is tension from both sides of the city-states, because like, well, you're supporting our enemy, which is bad, but you're also supporting us, which is good. So like pissed off that they're also doing trade to give the people that they're actively beefing with stuff as well.
It's like the opposite of the enemy of my enemy. It's like the friend of my enemy, but also is my friend. How do we calculate this?
So that's kind of the complex feelings I think between them. Sorry?
Well, I was just going to ask, do you think Phyros is putting in any effort to do some expansion across the water into the city-states now that they're fractured?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
But there is one thing that I was tempted to bring up now or later, but I'll mention now. There's these two islands in the Bay of Phyros here that I had previously mentioned being technically separate nations that are kind of like almost under like militaristic kind of rule adjacent. So
well, it's kind of like the sort of post-colonial, a lot of the islands down in between North America and South America and stuff like that, where it's like, oh well, this is its own place, but it's like, well, it's kind of technically French. But like it's not though, but like it is. Like what the hell? It's just like history has made it into like this really strange thing.
So I think that those two places specifically like are their own individual like nations.
But use Phyros currency.
They use Phyros currency, and Phyros is like actively still trying to take them, or at least like seal their claim on them, but they aren't allowing themselves to be tamed.
Fair enough.
And so there's probably some skirmishes there, but that's, in my opinion, probably like their back burner simmering like actual conflict is with those guys.
They're going for the cultural victory over them kind of thing, and which would again make sense. Like that's kind of what Phyros is doing. Is it's such an economic center that it's really enveloping a lot of places just because it's like we have all the money, we have all of your money.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do about it now? So yeah, that does make a lot of sense, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that that's the biggest like actual conflict is with those.
Phyros is going to be with those sort of micro island nations.
But with the city-states, I don't think that there's an active like encroachment or battle going on.
Yeah.
And I think we hadn't talked about this, but when it comes to the triplet cities, I think very good.
Yeah.
Not only because again trade, but also how do you feel about Phyros like supporting them during their rebellion?
Separation?
Yeah.
Interesting idea.
Like not only with like just, trading with them being the pariah or whatever of like this powerful kingdom.
But also actually supplying like probably like
potentially actually
military or
sending
military
over
support.
some like ships or something like that.
Or at the very least supplying them with weapons. And sort of fueling their separation. Yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting idea.
I kind of like the idea of them having like a very good relationship bordering on alliance, but not quite legally binding like contracts signed, but like sort of unspoken alliance.
Yeah, that's probably I like that definitely. And it gives them a proper actual ally as well. I also like to think that maybe Phyros is also because we were talking about how a lot of the city-states are attempting, and the kingdom that was the city-states was trying to encroach on the sort of chaos area.
The wild, untamed...
Western section, I like to think that Phyros might be attempting to do the same thing, but trying to attack 100%. It from the water.
I for sure agree. I was actually going to hopefully get to that thought as well, where I think that, like, just as much maybe they are, like... sailing their ships around the other side of the continent, long-ass voyage, but trying to also kind of dip some fingers in the pot there, because if they are able to secure some of these things, these like these relics, these pieces of these monsters...
And powerful resources,
that have given power to these places, that's huge money, let alone like, even if maybe you don't even want to use it for money, maybe that's... your new key to, like...
military might.
Yeah, your own power, and maybe not necessarily, like, I'm going to beat the government or whatever, like, but just power and respect and stature and...
England coming over to... the England, France, and Spain and the like all attempting to come over to North America. Like, that, it was a race to be like, oh, wow, this new place, huge economic opportunity. We're all going to be doing it, and Phyros is probably going to be kind of spearheading that whole thing because they are probably going to have the most powerful navy in the world at that moment. And so it's probably going to be a bit of a race between the city-states and Phyros in the grand scheme. It's probably going to be between the two, and then like everyone else is going to be dabbling. Yeah. But those two are going to be basically racing to see who can find the source of the power and control it.
This is totally... have not spoken about this yet. What do you think about... There's an island over here that is just off the coast of the mainland continent that has this, like, this rift.
Yeah.
What do you think about that being, like, sort of almost like...
like an outpost?
Yeah, like an outpost is kind of the word I was thinking of. Like, where they've kind of tossed up, like, a wooden beam... fortress, like pretty simple, but like a fort, and some docks and stuff like that, so that they can kind of have a little bit of a base of operations to go into here, because that's kind of the only like civilization that close to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this as well, but there might be a little bit scattered about like coastline, but we could make that into a very powerful one. Definitely, I like that idea. And I do like the idea of Phyros having a bit of an expansionist feel. And politics will get in the way, but there's this untapped resource and untapped countryside that's just waiting to be plucked from, and Phyros is all in on that. Absolutely. So that feels good. Yeah, definitely.
And then classic, we got the like jungle.
They
don't really have a relationship with anybody for the most part, because they're doing their own little thing. They're Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, well, and also anyone who kind of shows up there is going to get eaten by some sort of jaguar.
Yeah.
Or probably smoke weed for the first time and hang out with the... and just be like, well, let's stay around here. We like
really
it.
mind-opening experience.
Exactly, and just hang out with the capybara.
Hey, man, you ever try psychedelics in the jungle?
It's pretty dope. Gotta see. Yeah, so like I do think like any level of encroachment that's going to happen there is probably just not going to be in their favor, and so they've just left it be.
Yeah.
And then one we actually kind of glossed over, the little Shire area.
For sure.
I feel like they're just not even on the fucking map for Phyros.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's like you got to get through Yothurmiir to get to them.
Yeah.
And they might, like, when it comes down to, like, maps made in Phyros, they might have the entire coastline of both continents mapped out, except for maybe that area. It's, like, blank because they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
They're just like, it's probably more mountains.
Yeah.
And so they fill it in instead.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just so not. They might, well, I mean, I guess the Shire area does have a coastline, so that, like, they might know,
I
but it's
that
just...
being very, like, tall cliffs, though.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, so we're, like, from the water, you're like, I think there's a gap in the mountains there, but, like, I can't see what's up there.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, I feel like there should be some area of, like, ocean access for sure. But it's, again, it might just be so unassuming that you sail. Like, that's kind of the beauty of this little Shire area, is that's the thing, is it's almost enchanted to be such a small, unassuming
very
place
safe,
that you just...
isolated,
that, like,
chill.
You naturally just kind of don't notice it.
Yeah.
But had to bring it up because it's there.
Well, one thing we actually... forgot to mention in the last episode, and I think we kind of talked about it while we were talking about the turtle, our big old moving continent buddy.
Turtle boy, yeah.
With Phyros, excellent relationship. I think that they'd probably do some of the most trading, like, so the Cress.
Yeah.
They probably view Phyros pretty well, and I think that in Phyros they probably get pumped because that brings a lot of, like, rejuvenated nature and fish and trade and stuff like that. Like, it's just a big old, turtle aplenty moment. Whenever it goes by, they're pumped. So I think overall, happy, good relationship.
I like to think that there is probably some sort of company, though, that actually wants
very
to...
opportunistic pieces of garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, again, or like, you'll have that problem probably with the pirates as well.
Definitely.
But I like to think that there is, like, this... It's probably a subsect of the people who are trying to colonize the other side of the world here that are just, again, snapshot current day, like, the relationship's good, but maybe there's some sort of villain who's secretly trying to find a way to control the turtle or something like that, or gain its resources.
Twirling his mustache and ordering 25 ships to hunt down the turtle now.
It's the bad guy from Pocahontas who's, like, really trying. He's here for the gold, man. But either way, I just thought I'd put that out there.
No, totally. I totally think you're right.
To talk about, going back to Yothurmiir just a tad to touch on the turtle as well, I think it's going to be pretty neutral.
I think it's probably going to be pretty neutral. I think that for the small-time fishing villages, they're pumped up to see it go by, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter to them.
Yeah. But just to touch on that while it's on the brain. So I think that kind of covers up most of the...
That's pretty much good for relationships-wise.
Yeah, the relationship between Phyros and Yothurmiir. It's complicated.
It's a situationship.
Economic status and development, I think we've covered very well.
Yes.
Phyros is very rich, very expanding.
Very rich, very expansive, very developed. Like, their capital cities are flush with money, flush with people singing and dancing in the streets. We talked about it, kind of like the vibe of, like, they're walking down the sunny, open walkways, picking fruit from the branches of overhanging trees and vines, and just having a good day. I think it's nice to live there.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think even in small town, like, for the most part, you may see children running around in their loincloths, splashing in some water. Like, life is easy, I think
it's such a prosperous nation.
Yeah, I think even the, like, poor side of it, like the most wealthily challenged people here still get to kind of just enjoy life because it's nice, it's chill, it's got access to everything you could want.
Yeah, I feel like even, like, the level, because again, when you get into a large population and in, like, a large city and stuff like that, like, you're going to have a level of homelessness, but I feel like it's going to be something that, like, the overflow from the rich is going to uplift the poor so much. Like, you say, like, there's food hanging from the trees all across town, and, like, certain things like that. So it's like, okay, it's a tough life, but it's like, fuck, you could be somewhere way worse.
It's the kind of, like, the way that kind of, I guess, being homeless in Phyros looks in a city at the very least is like the way that, what's his name, Dionysus is like...
I think you might be thinking of Diogenes.
That Diogenes,
because Dionysus is a god.
Right, okay, got it. But lives in like a wine barrel and just like plucks fruit from the thing, wanders around throughout the day just vibing out. Because, like, the weather's good.
Yeah.
Like, so you never need to worry about being in the freezing cold or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of eating fruit and vegetables all day and chilling. Like, it's
the Alexander the Great of Phyros walks up and he's like, "Get out of the way! Or can you move over? You're blocking my son." Like, like that level of just like.
And then he's like, "I am your son."
Yeah. Luke. I am your father.
Yeah, anyway, so I think that, like, the general vibe is peaceful and nice and chill, and I think it's a good place to live. I think they got everything they could want, really.
Well, I mean, speaking of the general people and stuff, let's move on to cultural norms and taboos.
Cultural norms and taboos.
Is there anything you see being sacred in Phyros? Is there anything you see being something that is just not allowed? That might separate it from other places, such as like when we were talking with Yothurmiir, like there's a bit of division on like the mining of the crystal titan and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of like a lot of small things.
Yeah.
Because number one, first and foremost, this place is very, very blended. Lots of different like people, beliefs, and cultures. So there might not be as many like big, solid taboos that are for everybody everywhere, but like as far as like what they do have in common culturally is things like their shared waterways and stuff like that. So small time, low key taboos, you could call them crimes. Things like
for example, just throwing it out there,
pooping in the waterways.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think there's also like...
There's a standard of cleanliness that's higher.
There's a standard of cleanliness. There's also like, I think a big thing about sort of cultural respect because of how blended they are, that like...
Racism's going to be something that's definitely frowned upon.
Super looked down upon.
Yeah.
Great. We love that in our fantasy worlds. Because... in fantasy world, you don't have to have as much racism as in the real world, guys.
Yeah, you don't.
It's a fun time, right?
You can, but it's up to you.
Not in my city.
Yeah. Well, I think if you add like different levels in different places, it kind of makes them feel weirdly more diverse.
Yes.
But in Phyros, for example, since it's such a
that's
melting
their
pot
thing.
of exactly.
Yeah, that's their thing, is that it's like so many different cultures and kinds of people and beliefs that being an asshole to another person because of their beliefs and stuff like that, that's a no-go, my guy.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, it's just on, even like, just again going back to the economics of it, like it's just gonna not facilitate trade if you try and piss people off.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of Phyros in the nutshell, is the fact that like other than Yothurmiir, it doesn't really have the only problem it seems to have is that it's with other places is that it's kind of too big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like kind of slowly encroaching, intentionally or unintentionally. But, trying to be like, oh, well, if you want to come over to my side, come on in. Like, again, it's kind of like doing a little bit of that civilization cultural victory sort of thing where it's like, no, well, you stay over there unless you want to come onto our side. Yeah. In which case, come right over. And so that, like, that would, to culturally be against that flies in the face of sort of the objective of the country in the first place. Whereas, like, I don't know, you go to the swamp, people are gonna kill you just for looking at them funny, let alone having a different skin color or being of a different race.
They're very inclusive. Yeah, they kill everybody.
Yeah, they hate everyone equally.
But yeah, so here I think that's a big thing, is that being fantasy racist in Phyros.
Yeah, bad time.
Crime.
Yeah. And then so you were just like, oh, don't poop in the waterways.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit of a joke, but also true.
Yeah.
What I actually mean by that is like there's a lot of water that kind of comes like all down centrally, and so kind of being respectful of waterways. Like they'll have like, magic or no magic, they will have means of cleaning the water regardless. Water's a big thing here as well in Phyros. There's a lot of like borderline spiritual things to do with water and the waterways and the rain and stuff like that. So just kind of being respectful of the water is a big thing.
Yeah, you see that being a very large... but one thing I was going to kind of reiterate is, like I said, like, do you think that they have a higher standard of cleanliness because they're such a rich country? Like it's actually kind of a bit of a taboo to be sort of like I'm not talking like, oh, you're just a higher level of cleanliness to where, like, since they're like such a wealthy country and stuff like that, and access to like water and bathing is like such a thing. I feel like they would
Stinky
develop...
people are shamed.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, or at least like culturally they'd be like, you need to go take a bath, because like...
I do think that that's a part of it, yeah, for sure, is because like it's so easy, like every day, jump in the water, my guy, jump in the water. You don't need to be stinky here.
It's there, yeah. I feel like that would kind of just develop with like this sort of access. Well, it's sort of like... if you think of like Rome, for example, it's like they had so much access to water because of aqueducts and stuff like that. And so like public baths and like public toilets were, it was kind of like the first, almost kind of the first civilization where that became a thing. Yeah. And so I feel like their standard for it was raised. Yeah. And I feel like you would see a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Phyros.
Definitely. I think they've kind of got that sort of vibe in the culture, is even if it's maybe not like written, but it is kind of like unspoken, expected, or probably at least a little bit spoken. Yeah. But
you'll be spoken to if you're not wearing deodorant.
Yeah. As far as like big time no-nos, I don't think that there's anything that's specifically jumping out at me. And I think that that's mostly because of like how varied the people are, and how many like different kinds of like cultures and beliefs have come together.
I feel like there's also less divisive landmarks around. Like Yothurmiir specific, like the two things where we were talking about cultural taboos have to do with locations and what they're all about, whereas Phyros doesn't seem to have that nearly as much. And so, like you say, there's no sacred land in Phyros that is kind of like that. It's the water flowing through it that is more sacred than anything. And so that's that area, really.
Yeah. I do think actually it would be an interesting thing. Again, this is not a big taboo. If anything, it's kind of more like a
smack on the wrist.
Even like a good thing, like just a kind of a part of the culture is like, you know, I think so, because I think we'll talk about the government in a second, but spoiler alert, the government is kind of like a house system where these different houses are in control of other cities and then have an elected representative that goes to be basically part of the council in the capital. And there's the city Simvali, and it is kind of like a very spiritual city in the way that they have like these floods semi-regularly and stuff like that. They're right in the middle of all these rivers conjoining, so it's flood-centric. And they have like an elevated city with these channels that go through, and they have like all these things to do with floods. We talked about it in a previous episode. I think it'd be kind of neat to see like maybe one certain like lineage or like semi-sub-religion that kind of makes like maybe like an annual trip out to try and maybe get themselves cleansed in a flood kind of situation.
That would be an interesting thing,
just as a neat little cultural thing to throw in there.
Yeah, definitely.
But I can't really think of many things that is like so bad here. That's very divisive or taboo.
They just have a general feeling of an elevated society, and so like there's just an expectation of people, but there's nothing. Like again, there's no sacred land. There's no like any way to seriously betray the general populace, other than like obvious crimes or treason or something. Like obvious stuff.
For sure.
That stuff that would get you thrown in jail anywhere. Yeah.
I think other than that, there's maybe a lot of small things to do with like their cities and the cultures and stuff like that, but nothing that's so big that it should be specifically name dropped, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. So that makes a lot of sense, definitely.
And then maybe jump into leadership and government, because I was talking about it.
Well, no, exactly, yeah.
So there's going to be, I believe it was 5.
That was kind of the plan.
5 different like council members basically that make up the government for Phyros. And I don't have them right in front of me, but basically it's like money, food, military, etc., etc. There's 5.
Yeah.
And they have these different cities that are kind of like throughout time always theirs. That's their clan, that's in their house. But they can rotate in the council, and they have different elected members from each of those houses that sit on this council in Phyros.
So one house can be more elected to be the representative of food, and then the sort of, next time around, another one can be elected to be the house of food. But the houses stay the same, but what they're in charge of can change. Although some of them stay more consistent in their area than others.
So I think that the way that works, I don't know if we ever locked it down or not, but it's kind of like, I think each house will elect somebody from amongst them in their home city, probably the government of their own city, and then they will travel to the council in Colossi, the capital, and then there amongst themselves they will elect people to specific positions within the city.
Yeah.
So if they're like, well, the guy from Geen we know he's good at food, so we'll put him in charge of food. I don't have any problem with that. Maybe they like to bicker a little bit about who will be the master of coin and trade.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of have, ones where they're pretty safe will probably be the ministers of food.
Yeah.
Because that's our thing.
Like you say, there's certain ones that just kind of have it nailed down and everyone's okay with that.
But they're always able to shift.
Yeah, I feel like the one of coin and trade is going to get tossed around like the freaking defense against the dark arts from Harry Potter.
Yeah, totally.
It's one that everyone's after, and so it's going to be constantly changing. And I feel like that's where most of your Game of Thronesy subterfuge is going to happen. Yeah. And that's the thing is, I like to think that maybe even that one is kind of looked to as a leadership role.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, like all of the houses are equal, but everyone kind of knows that everyone wants
a little more equal than the rest.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that does kind of also have a little bit of sub-drama to it as well, because there's a lot of, maybe I'll buy this vote or whatever, in the council, hey, I'll under the table slide you $200,000 if you give me your vote for the minister of coin or whatever.
Yeah.
But to an extent, because I want there to be lots of checks and balances to make this a good, proper government. I want them to put a lot of thought into it.
The stuff that happens is a true under the table thing. It is something that is probably not overly common. And when it does happen and it's caught, it's going to be looked down upon. Yeah. But also at the same time, it's going to happen. And when it's going to happen, it's going to be a big move. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Going on to important history and current events, if we're kind of done on that one. Yeah. One thing that has stuck out to me in the amount of time we've been going over this is we don't really exactly have a Leviathan specifically dedicated to Phyros. This is pretty well the only area that doesn't have one. And do you want that to be a characteristic of it, or do you want them to be maybe a handful of neutral ones? There's this huge bay we have. It's there could be some sort of large fish or something like that. Or Phyros, again, maybe one of the reasons it's blown up is the fact that it doesn't have a giant freaking animal stomping them down constantly. So it had the opportunity.
I kind of think both. They had a good start because they've been able to be so powerful. They've been able to brush off any small ones before they get a chance to become more powerful and stuff like that. I kind of want them to be like the Green Hills zone. It's just kind of easy going. That being said, I do kind of think it's a cool idea to have a big old crab in the bay that maybe people just see sometimes and they're but it's maybe never cause them real problems.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, the bay might...
Big starfish.
Oh my god, that's a great idea.
It's down there. It's very menacing, but it hasn't moved ever.
Or, well, maybe it does. Maybe it causes subtle. I hate to say subtle tsunami because that's not exactly a thing. But all of a sudden it's just big wave. And that can cause problems, but it's also not a catastrophic thing, like a dragon waking up, or anything like that. Maybe the starfish. Maybe this isn't known to history, or it could be, but it would be funny if that starfish kind of moved into this bay because it knows the turtle doesn't come in here.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of it's made its own ecosystem of this little area because the turtle always stays to the deep water, and obviously as you get into this bay, it's going to the actual depth is going to be way shorter. And
hear me out also. We're snowballing here.
Okay.
So on this thing's skin, it has basically coral reefs growing off of it.
Oh yeah.
And it moves around. It's just a moving reef, and it's beautiful and it's nice. But also in certain areas it becomes shallower there, and so ships sometimes just straight up like wreck on it.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like an inconvenience, but it's also beautiful and not really its fault. You just weren't paying attention enough, and it moved. So like,
Yeah.
you know.
Is this a Krusty Krab? No, this is Phyros. But no, I love that idea, yeah. And it's just so passive that you really don't need to think about it too much.
Yeah.
I like that idea. And I didn't like, I kind of liked that Phyros didn't have one, but it was also like, I feel like I should have something.
Yeah, I just like the idea that it's easy.
Yeah.
That it's the tutorial place, you know?
Yeah. And also if you come up with a name for it, like the Reef Star or something like that, like it's such a cool idea. Okay, so we got that. Vibe check.
Vibe check. First off, good, but also
With the undertone of
a
expansionist.
little bit of being shitty.
Yeah.
A little bit.
For some reason,
Nice to be there, not nice to be living directly next to it, but not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get, at least just to make a real life, like, cultural tie down, I get, like, a lot of, like, Greece from this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, basically, like, Mediterranean, old school Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Like, Byzantine, some portions Ottoman, some portions Greek, some portions Rome, but, like, definitely cultures that were around in the old school Mediterranean.
Yeah,
That's definitely the feeling I get from it too, for
good.
sure.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was picturing as well. So that's kind of good to nail down just as like an area of inspiration. And yeah, I feel like the vibe is pretty distinct. Like, you know, wealthy nation, very prosperous. I get the feeling it's a little like, I don't want to say Fire Nation because like that's overtly like out at war with people
they're
constantly.
Bad guys.
But like what in
Fire Nation's a baddie.
and when you go into, but this is the thing, is like if any of you have actually seen The Last Airbender, if you haven't, you should. But you know, like in the times where they're in the Fire Nation, it's like really peaceful there.
Yeah.
And like there is a little bit of this like authoritarian regime, or a lot actually, but I don't know, I feel like the people still like to live there and have the feeling of the like, oh, we're in this prosperous nation and there's this general feeling of wealth, like more that than the authoritarian stuff. But you see what I'm getting at. Like there is a level of prosperousness and like education and this kind of thing that is abundant here. So yeah, I think that kind of covers it for the most part.
Wraps up all we need to talk about to get the, you know, the yay deep explanation on this place. So we can dive into the other cities and stuff like that on our next pass through. But yeah,
top it off with the flag.
Yeah, I got a little flag in mind here.
Yeah,
we'll whip this bad boy up and pop it on screen.
This is another one where we've had plenty of time to kind of think about it. But I actually had an idea of maybe what we might want to add to it. You know, the idea that we kind of sketched down here. Do you want to maybe put the starfish overlapping the sun? Because it could also be something to sort of represent the bay and wealth.
Okay, hear me out.
Okay,
hear me out.
Yeah.
So, the gist of this is it's going to be, the background is just a field of like nice warm yellow, and that is kind of representing like the easy sun-baked like plains, the fields of wheat, like just the easy living of the landscape, and then centered with a like warm orange sun that's going to take up a pretty good amount of the center of it, that is sort of surrounded by 5 purple diamonds to represent the 5 different houses of the government. So let's say hypothetically that we do a.
Okay.
I'm just trying to do it quick.
Yeah.
So. Let's just say that's what we got, and say that it looks nicer. And then we can do, potentially, the starfish. Oh, maybe not like that. Maybe better than that. But like, sort of inverted, you know what I'm saying?
It's pointing at the non-pointy parts.
That's shitty, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, inverted. I don't do art. Yeah, occupying like just the center of the sun.
I like the idea. I'm not sure on the pink though. What if we did like a more like a blue?
I don't mind a blue. Yeah.
Like, well, because it also kind of represents the ocean in a way.
Blue nice.
Mine's not better. But, you know what I mean?
I'm out of that. I think that I don't want it to overshadow the sun, but I don't mind a little touch of it.
You know, I actually like the simplicity of the original design. I just thought like the starfish is such a prominent thing, but also Phyros also kind of might consider itself to be kind of bigger than the Leviathan it represents.
I agree.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they necessarily want to include that on their flag.
I feel like they don't identify with it. You know what I mean? And so that's let's stick with the original sort of idea we had for the design. I just wanted to toss it out there because it's also like we had the sun and so the starfish as well. Like I had the idea of the overlap, what I think was cool. But no, I like the simplicity of the design. So we'll sort of stick with that. But yeah, so I guess that really does nail down a lot of the specifics on Phyros. Yeah. And again, we'll get into the more specifics as we go along. But cool. Thanks for following us along on this episode, and we'll see you in the end card.
Bye for now. Bye. Hey there. Welcome to the end card. If you're still watching, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching the video. Consider leaving us a little like, a little comment as a treat. We've been good. Also, we'll probably respond. We might even talk about it right here. Say, talking about comments, that's a good idea. You want to read a couple?
No.
Okay.
I will.
See you in the next one.
But all right. So, I have one here. From Nothing Special 443. Of course you're special,
You're
443.
special to us.
A 14 when 15 is successful sounds exactly like you make it, but fuck up your ankle in the process. That's such a good way to do it. Yeah. If it's just one of those instances where it's like they're jumping across a bottomless chasm or something like that, for example.
Who would do that?
Yeah. But just certain things where you're just like, frick, man, like the fallout from this is going to take up a lot of time and not be that interesting. They're close enough, like, let's make it happen. And also, like, having a close call like that also kind of feels cool for your players. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you'll find, like how many moments in, like, Indiana Jones where does he just make it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it adds a little bit of tension, and it just makes it feel a little bit more perilous and dangerous. It's not a you made it or you don't. Sometimes it's a close call.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily tell them, like, you know, you just made it, but if you can make it feel like they just made it, it'll be satisfying.
Definitely. So thank you, Nothing Special 443.
And don't forget, you're special to us. From our video on bringing together players in your world, we have a comment here from Quolash McDuck. We'll have the comment up. Quolash McDuck. Thanks for commenting, Quolash McDuck.
Mr. McDuck. Mrs. Shit, I don't even know either.
Nice try, buddy. They say, not exactly new to me, but damn good advice for a newer GM. Great video and on point. Thank you very much. I needed that.
Me too. I think we all needed that.
Thanks for commenting, Quolash McDuck.
Moving on. I have one here from Sketchy Scribbler 8285.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep, Sketchy Scribbler. Right. I can read.
I thought I had you on that one.
Yeah. Also consider the Humble Adventurers Guild in place of a tavern. Just referring to when we were talking about the tavern start. You are looking for a job to take while there are plenty of escort me to this place. Collect X amount of herb. And help me get my lost pet quests. The only one considerable note right now is the one that they will not allow you to take on without X number of people in your party. No, that's actually a great point. And I mean, a lot of adventurers guilds kind of double as taverns in like certain settings as well. And so it really is like the perfect way to put in, okay, it's the tavern, and like you have the loosey-goosiness of that where a lot of different types of people, but the overt, hey, this is for adventurers, and so your like of people will show up.
Yeah.
That's actually a really cool twist that I'd never considered.
Yeah, it could be kind of like Monster Hunter style, where like to take on a certain amount of, take on a quest that's rated this difficult, you need 4 members of your party. Otherwise, like, they're just sending you possibly to your death, and they won't do that.
It's so that does. That kind of covers exactly what we were talking about, where it's like it's hard for players to just come up with a reason, but it's like, oh frick, okay, who's here who doesn't have a party, and it's just like all of the players just like lift up their hand, like it works like a charm. So that was a great idea, definitely,
totally.
So keep that in mind, all others.
And thank you, Sketchy Scribbler 8285. We appreciate you. Next we have on our Simply Rambling episode 1. That's our little unrelated podcast where we talk about whatever we want. In that episode, we talked about the big one, the earthquake that could potentially wipe out the Western Hemisphere, the deep ocean, and all of the spooky, scary things that can happen in there. And I think bananas going extinct or something like that.
Yeah, it was an honorable mention.
Yeah. We talked about some stuff. We had a good time. Check that out. We'll do another one at some point soon.
Yeah.
Hoodrat Bat says, simply vibin'. Oh, yeah. Thanks for commenting, Hoodrat Bat. That's all.
Yep.
Anyway.
That is all.
Thanks again for watching. You could also follow us on our Spotify. We're here on our YouTube. You could subscribe to us here. Or you can check us out on Instagram as well. You can leave us a little comment and follow us there. We'll start doing some things pretty soon, I swear. But thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye for now.